Hardships often prepare people for an extraordinary destiny, said C.S. Lewis, and I really do believe that. I think that when accidents happen to us or things we weren't expecting occur, we feel like the world is ending, but in reality, it might just be beginning, and maybe there's an opportunity waiting that you could have never imagined, that you wouldn't have had if that awful, horrible, frustrating hardship hadn't happened. I came across a quote recently on Twitter or something that said, when something unexpected happens in your life, just yell, plot twist, and move on. And that's not a bad way to look at things. Today, though, I want to tell you guys a story about some of the hardships that I faced lately and how they turned out to be really extraordinary opportunities. So when I was a sophomore in high school, I was super involved in a bunch of things. I did Model United Nations, I swam, I did student government, I did more clubs than I could count on two hands. There was always a travel trip for Model United Nations to go to a different conference, internationally and nationally, and it was really cool. But because I was so invested in swimming, I was like, well, I'll never have time for that. Well, my sophomore year, I really hurt my shoulder and I was out for the season. Now, swim championships were in February, the same weekend as the Model UN conference at the University of Chicago that my high school went to every year. And by a twist of fate, a student who was going dropped out, and she had already paid for the spot. And my teacher offered it to me, already paid for, a free trip to Chicago to attend this conference. And I said yes. I was a little nervous and I didn't have a lot of time to prepare, but it ended up being one of my favorite experiences. It was a really incredible time, and being there for 3 days in Chicago with these strangers debating human rights issues really kind of helped to change my path, I think, for the future. I really found a passion for human rights. I got a chance to experience the city of Chicago and listened to students talk about what the school was like, because the committee heads, the chairs of each committee, were students from UChicago. If I hadn't been hurt, I wouldn't have had the time to commit to something like that. And that experience continued to change my life. I traveled to Amsterdam and Lisbon, Portugal, and Paris, and these incredible cities for international conferences, and I made friends all over the world that I still stay in touch with to this day. Because of all those injuries, I couldn't swim at the level I was swimming, and so I took up running, and I ran my first half marathon, which was also incredibly fun and incredibly challenging. But it was definitely one of the most rewarding experiences I've had. In fact, even before that happened, there was something that happened when I was in middle school. I was swimming, and the next day after a big meet, I had this awful pain in my stomach, and they thought it was appendicitis, but then they couldn't find any evidence of that. And at one point, I had a fever of 105 and was in the hospital for a week, and we basically went back and forth for 4 months trying to figure out what this awful, terrible pain in my stomach was, until we were like, let's do surgery. And they found a torn stomach ligament, and they also took out my appendix, because why not? You don't need it, and I hope we never discover a reason that you need it, because I don't have one anymore. And while that was a really painful and frustrating experience that made it hard to do so many things that I loved, it also led me to a place that I'm incredibly grateful for. If I hadn't stopped swimming, I probably would have gone on to the local high school, because swimming was a big thing there. But because I had more free time, again, a friend of mine who attended one of the private schools in our city invited me to come shadow her there because she thought I would love it. And so I went, and I completely and totally fell in love with the place that would become my home. And that's where I found the people who really felt like family to me. And I couldn't imagine having spent 4 years anywhere else. It's crazy, the more I think about it, how many experiences like that have happened to me in my life, big and small. And the more I reflect on those, the easier it gets to try to think about this. I've been trying to remind myself of those things because when they happened, I didn't think anything good was going to come out of it. I felt like I was losing so much of my life and parts of me that I really wanted to hold on to. It took months sometimes before I realized what it was that I had gained. Before I sat down and really thought that, wow, if that hadn't happened, I never would have gone here or met this person or done this. And now all of those things are such a big part of me and such a good part of me. Maybe when the things that you hope for are starting to fall apart, it's because there are better things waiting. And that's very, very hard to see at the time. And when you're hurting and you're sad, it might not be something that you want to hear or think about. Give yourself some time and then try to remember the things in your life that have been that way. I have to believe that something incredible is going to come out of this. And I have to hope that a year from now, I'm going to look back and I'm going to say, I am so glad that that happened. Because it hurt. Because it was hard. And because I lost a lot of things that I wanted. But I found what I needed. Something extraordinary is going to come out of this odyssey. I don't know what it is or where I'll find it. But when I do, I'll let you know. I hope extraordinary things are coming your way. Until next time.